my hands full.
Blame them! Everyone's started thinking they're right. All the time. And they won't change their mind. If you try to argue, they go mad.
It's no longer a family show about space and time travel. It's literally a bunch of memes telling us that white straight men are the source of all evil in the universe. If Doctor Who is dying, it's because the BBC has killed it.
This is the third in a short series of short videos reflecting on Disney-era Doctor Who, which even BBC media critics have noticed had a significant diversity and inclusion problem.
I had a really interesting text. This is from Andy, who says, I'm a guy who considers himself of the left. Most of my friends are women, some are trans, some are gay. But even I cringe watching an episode of Doctor Who. It has just become an intolerant programme condemning most of its viewers simply for existing. Now, it's interesting because when I watched this 20 minutes, it was just kind of randomly on, I was pottering around, it was on. I didn't feel as strongly as Andy feels, but I did notice like the diversity of the characters, and I was just like, okay, so this one's this person, this one's this person, this one's this person.
Yeah.
Fine, but I can see why Andy is saying what he's saying.
Sometimes it does feel like you're being lectured to.
I think in the few times we've had to watch it for must watch, because I never watch it by choice. I've come in and said exactly the same thing as Andy.
So he's not imagining it. He's not alone. And I have always wondered, how do you keep making a show if it is just lecturing at people?
It's my daughter. She's been expressing doubts. I think you need to come and take her away.
So in this presentation, I'm going to provide a sneak peek behind the curtains at the political, cultural and corporate conditions under which Disney Doctor Who was commissioned and produced. And using the BBC's own methodology, attempt to identify any evidence in support of Andrew's perceived problem concerning the quality, diversity and inclusion perceived on-screen characteristic monitoring subset that can be succinctly summarised as straight white men.
You really are wonderfully bad, aren't you? Beg your pardon?
So, by way of background, in 2016 the UK media regulator Ofcom introduced new conditions to the BBC's operating licence to address what their CEO described as a woeful lack of diversity and a serious cultural disconnect between programme makers and many viewers who feel that people who look like them are often portrayed negatively, if at all. In response, the BBC introduced a code of practice they claimed would hardwire diversity directly into their content commissioning process. And consequently, by the time the first female Doctor graced the cover of their first annual diversity report, all programme makers were collecting, submitting and reviewing data on the perceived diversity characteristics of all on-screen characters portrayed.
The work of the British film and television industry is admired for its quality and craftsmanship all around the globe. And I know that all you brilliant, creative and talented people share one passion.
Filling in online forms is what we got into this crazy business called Show for. Well, today is our lucky day because the Diamond Diversity Monitoring System is here.
Diamond Diversity is a way of finding out who is working in the industry now so that over time we can help ensure that television reflects a true cross-section of the British public.
It's an online diversity monitoring system. It's used by all the major broadcasters and it gives consistent diversity data on all the programmes they commission. So that is on and off screen of all UK originated productions.
And so using the guidelines that Bad Wolf Productions will themselves presumably have followed, I've captured a reasonably accurate snapshot of on-screen characteristics across the Disney Doctor's entire 21 episode run.
The diversity perceived form, what do we see and hear on screen? So we collect perceived data. It's to get a clearer understanding of whether audiences are seeing themselves reflected on screen. It's that phrase, if you can see it, you can be it. So people seeing themselves on screen in different roles really helps people to understand that that's possible for them.
And to clarify, perceived diversity means taking a viewer's personal perspective of specifically what they see and hear.
Who bit you? Was it a dog? Was it a man? Was it your wife?
So by way of example, the entirety of Ncuti Gatwa's 60-minute Christmas Day debut features a grand total of one brief and relatively inconsequential scene involving a white man who can reasonably be perceived to be heterosexual. We know this because there is sufficient objective information included within the storyline to allow us to draw this conclusion.
She's gonna say yes. Who is your girlfriend when you ask her to marry you on Christmas Day?
How do you know that?
My sonic screwdriver just went ping, and that precise ping was detecting a 2-carat diamond in your pocket, which says engagement ring, and I'm guessing that she's a she, because 91% of men wouldn't choose a diamond. Plus Christmas Day, it's obvious.
By contrast, there is insufficient evidence to determine the sexual orientation of the two other white male characters that briefly appear earlier in the episode. One of these characters has no dialogue, and as we are only recording those with speaking roles, our tally of male characters currently stands at 2. The male presenting Doctor obviously makes 3.
Wait, how did you do that?
I spent a long, hot summer with Harry Houdini.
And the 3 lines from a character called Abdul, who I perceive to be from a minority ethnic background, brings our total up to 4.
Oh, Merry Christmas, Abdul. Stop making such a fuss.
Finally, as is often the case, this episode also featured a number of non-human characters. And for the purpose of this audit, with one exception that I'll get to, I've only recorded diversity data for characters who could reasonably be perceived to be human by the casual viewer. Anyway, I'm happy to get into further detail about my methodology in the comments, but long story short, out of the total of 12 human-speaking characters featured in this episode, 33% are male, which is significantly below the BBC's 50% target for on-screen representation. Now, obviously, this only represents 1 hour of television, and we need significantly more data input before achieving a meaningful measurement. So, having repeated this process another 20 times, I estimate that out of the 307 human adult characters appearing across all 21 episodes, a grand total of 44% were male, which in fairness isn't exactly far from the BBC's implied 50% target. I also attempted a head count for each episode's prominent lead support and significant returning characters. This was a slightly more subjective exercise. Nevertheless, the overall male total for this metric dropped significantly to 33%. The BBC do not have explicit targets for on-screen male character representation, but assuming that they're aiming for a 50-50 gender split across their published targets, we can establish that men from minority ethnic backgrounds and gay men are represented at roughly twice the percentage of their respective target goals, an outcome that holds true even when we remove data for appearances by our first black gay male presenting Doctor. Conversely, appearances by white men are 18% lower than might have been expected. Unfortunately, men with perceived disabilities also haven't fared particularly well, achieving an on-screen representation total that falls significantly short of a presumed goal of 6%. I'll be considering the Disney Doctor's approach to disability representation in a separate video, so for now the only observation I'll share is that although Pete technically doesn't make the count because he doesn't have any dialogue, it is at least past remarkable to note that he's the one who gets told to make the tea.
Get another one, Pete.
And finally, we come to the on-screen representation total for perceived straight white men, which perhaps unsurprisingly comes in at around 30% below ONS population estimates. Now, in fairness, and in my humble subjective opinion, effective and entertaining storytelling should always come first and foremost, and well before any contumacious corporate concerns around counting character characteristics. And consequently, all of these simple headline head counts are only really presented for added context. The primary purpose of this analysis is to identify significant trends regarding the portrayal of characters who do ultimately appear on the screen. All of which brings us to the on-screen portrayal of our 21 straight white men. Let's start with the positives. The heterosexual historical figures George, Paul, John and Ringo play a significant role in the Devil's Chord, with Lennon and McCartney even somehow saving the day, as does John Francis Vater of the Anglican Army the following week. And despite being killed off before the opening credits, his artificial intelligence generated presence offers a rare positive portrayal of fathers. who are otherwise largely absent throughout the rest of the run.
You've already got 2 mums. What, do you collect them?
Reginald Pye sacrifices himself to somehow save his cinema patrons. And although I'm not certain we're given sufficient information to make a definitive determination about Ricky September, for the record, he did seem like a decent enough sort, at least up to the point where we discover that he was actually a white supremacist. Including the aforementioned policeman, 6 of our number don't stick around long enough to make much of an impression at all. This includes the one-line, imaginatively named husband, and 2 of Ruby Sunday's alternative timeline boyfriends, who we are assured to be perfectly pleasant, even if one of them is completely shit in bed.
It was never gonna work, and that is my fault, except for the bed thing, because that really was you.
Lord Barton is observed to be an absolute cad, long after his actual death at the start of Rogue, which leaves us with Mad Jack.
Roger Ap William. That's a bad example of the Welsh. Terrifying. The most dangerous Prime Minister in history.
Oh, he is a monster.
Alan the Incel.
When we're married, I really don't think you should wear clothes that tight anymore. Plus, no more texting after 8 p.m.
Oh my God, you've taken coercive control and made it complete control of the whole planet.
The Kid.
You monsters.
I'm only doing the things you expect of me.
An online agitator and traditional family values admirer, Conrad Clark.
Conrad Clark is a monster.
All of whom are the main villain in their debut episode, thus representing 2/3 of the most common subgroup of Disney-era Doctor Who episode Big Bad, the human presenting male. A group that is closely followed by the one comprising appearances by 5 male-coded monsters. Specifically the Goblin King, the Bogeyman, the Man Traps, Sutek, and Mr. Ring-a-Ding-Ding. By comparison, with the exception of the brief appearance of an extremely camp white supremacist and a reoccurring lead character trait that we'll get to, all perceived homosexual characters appear to be presented in an almost entirely positive light. And although 3 episodes do revolve around the antics of a mixed-sex group of villains, only one features a primarily female-coded threat. And even then, as they appear as an ambulance avatar obeying the algorithms of a faceless corporation, and wearing the face of a sweet old lady who has the misfortune to become a minion of Sutek, there is still plenty of evidence pointing the finger towards male coercive control. It is also statistically significant to note that despite all that extra Disney money, the masks came off in the final run of episodes, where no less than 50% of main monsters were men, one of whom also plays a key role in the finale.
How many?
Cams are down, but scans indicate 1 male age 20-25.
Stop the lift. No, wait. Let him come. That man has single-handedly undermined everything we work for. Defensive positions.
Yes, Mom.
For those unfamiliar, Conrad Clark is another of Ruby Sunday's disappointing ex-boyfriends, and a conspiracy theorist who makes his money from knowingly spreading misinformation online. In the 2-part finale, he becomes part of a 2/3 male presenting Unholy Trinity, and proceeds to project his extremely traditional ableist, sexist, trans and homophobic vision of utopia onto an unsuspecting world. Conrad's wish world is an interesting metaphor for his creator to run with, especially in the context of those political, cultural and corporate conditions under which characters like him will have been created. Because unlike the good old days of green bug-eyed monsters and colourblind casting, scriptwriters are now proactively encouraged to consciously consider how their finished product may best meet the BBC's commitment to reflect, represent and serve the UK's diverse communities, portraying them accurately and, by doing so, bringing them together for shared experiences that contribute to the social cohesion and well-being of all.
We know everything, thanks.
And you know nothing? Shame you're not a woman anymore.
Because she'd have understood. Something a male-presenting Time Lord will never understand.
Which brings to that main exception to the perceived positive portrayal of homosexual characters, the 15th Doctor's dark side, and his perceived particularly powerful hatred of monsters, manifesting in the image of straight white men.
Planet of the incel.
Help me, save me.
Where's Alan? do you mean?
He's a sperm and an egg.
Oh.
Goodbye, Alan.
This place is nuts.
Yes, queen!
In episode 1, the Doctor's dismissive attitude towards the fate of Alan the Incel stands in marked contrast to a previous act of mercy shown to a green bug-eyed monster who tried to start World War III.
What happened to Margaret?
Here she is.
She's an egg.
Regress to her childhood.
She's an egg.
She can start again. Live a life from scratch. If we take her home, give her to a different family, tell them to bring her up properly, she might be all right.
20 years and several regenerations occur between these two examples, so for a more up-to-date perspective on the Doctor's perceived moral compass, we can turn to the plea of the evil barber that he defeats in episode 5.
The stories say you protect life.
That is what I am doing.
Despite the fact that he forced his friends into a form of indentured servitude in a madcap scheme to rain vengeance upon the gods, the Doctor risks his life to save the barber.
Don't let this be how your story ends.
Provides him with a post-villainy pep talk, and even books himself in for another short back and sides. The moral lesson is that hurt people, which is a message that could certainly apply to the monsters appearing in either side of this story, given that we learn that one has witnessed the genocide of his people, and the other has experienced childhood domestic abuse. And yet, after giving Conrad a lecture on his moral misgivings, which are comparatively moderate compared to some, the Doctor proceeds to somewhat uncharacteristically taunt him with a glimpse at his future fate.
I'll tell you your future. You die in a prison cell, boiling in anger and poison, until your heart packs in age 49, alone and unloved, forgotten. You aren't even a footnote, just ashes on the wind.
2 weeks after this act of mental torture, the Doctor then gets physical and literally tortures the kids almost to the point of death, before leaving him to a presumably unpleasant fate at the hands of a genocidal corporation, something which was a step too far even for many on the most left-wing side of the fanbase, who reacted in horror to such inhumane treatment of an obvious allegorical conduit for the plight of the Palestinian people.
They killed X amount on October 7th, and if we don't genocide the Palestinians now, they're going to kill all of us. Can you not see the moral contradiction here? I'm sorry.
Anyway, by way of bringing this all to some sort of conclusion, I invite you to pause for a moment to reflect on why it is that so many mostly straight white men of a certain age,
these guys will commit terrorism, and that's not even a joke, that's just a demonstrable fact,
keep popping up on YouTube to bang on about Doctor Who.
Do you want to come with me? Because if you do, then I should warn you. You're going to see all sorts of things. Ghosts from the past, aliens from the future, the day the Earth died in a ball of flame. It won't be quiet, it won't be safe, and it won't be calm. But I tell you what it will be. A trip of a lifetime.
Scott?
Yes?
Are you a Doctor Who fan?
I am. Sometimes I feel from watching an episode, I like the fact that there is so much inclusivity right front and centre. Sometimes it does feel like you're being lectured to.
Interesting. I used to watch it when I was much younger. I think Peter Davison, all around then. Sylvester McCoy with the scarf. I kind of love that. That was my era. And I did watch it. I don't think I ever wasn't passionate about it, like I will say about Press Gang or something. Are you a Doctor Who fan?
No, I used to like the Tom Baker ones, and then I think I pretended to like Doctor Who more than I actually did so that boys would like me. But then I decided I didn't really care if boys liked me. So no, I don't watch Doctor Who.
You can't say things like that.
900 years of time and space, and I've never been slapped by someone's mother.
Your face.
It hurts.
You're so gay.
Russell T Davies once observed that As a gay man in his 20s, he felt he could be more open about his sexuality than he could about his relatively closeted love for Doctor Who. I'm old enough to relate to this anecdote and recall that by 1989, the Doctor's somewhat maligned, marginalised and mostly male fan base were often perceived to be geeky, obsessive, socially awkward anoraks, more likely to stay at home watching repeats of their favourite programme than go anywhere near a girl. For that reason, I will remain eternally grateful to him for having had the faith and foresight to revive my favourite storytelling vehicle, and for a brief moment, maybe even make it kind of cool. Nevertheless, by now, I have to agree with Andrew and conclude that Russell T Davies really does appear to have a major problem with the sort of people with the sort of personal characteristics that don't even exist in his own personal wish world projection of who's still tuning in. And I guess that back in the real world, that wish is coming true.
This is the death of intelligence.